ladles and jelly spoons, boils and ghouls, welcome to Johnbonne Reviews, your number one source for number boo games. This fear, we're doing something a little different. I'll be taking a butcher's hook at multiple games this year, all £5 or 6 feet under on the Steam store, and all of them are scary dairy. Okay, so it's not that different to that time on the Greasy Gamer Show where I reviewed 2 games before Halloween, which brings me nicely onto our first Terror Tale. I like to call this one I, Zombie.
Blood for the Blood God.
I, Zombie claims to be quite a different zombie game, where you are the zombie. Different, yes. Original, not quite. Stubbs the zombie and Rebel without a pulse beat it to the punch, or chomp, and its price matched the content. Not unlike I, Zombie, which for £1.59 will offer significantly less. But is it good for the price? As you'd expect, you play a zombie with the ability to infect others and amass an army of the dead. Well, army's a generous word. A rabble of green skin and gnashing teeth is more appropriate. The zombie we'll refer to as George from now on needs only to rub himself against his opponents to turn them into one of his own, and they will do the same when zombificated if I raid. George and his chums are vulnerable to bullets, so going up against army men will require guerrilla tactics. Luckily for us, George is patient zero and can control his fetid followers with limited functionality, such as getting them to follow him, stop and launch themselves hungrily at soldiers, scientists, and civilians. As simple as all this sounds, iZombie has a means of separating the quick and the dead. Health. When George and co take damage, they get progressively slower with each hit, so drawing your enemy close is crucial. Or, if the level allows, bum rush the living at the cost of your end of level rating. Upon clearing a level, you'll be given a star rating out of 3, and keeping the dead alive is what earns you stars. There's sadly little variation in the level objectives, but with there being only 20, you won't get bored too quickly. If, however, you do enjoy those, there's another 20 Christmas-themed ones with similar gameplay. Who knows, maybe I'll cover that in December, in 2038. As is the case with all my reviews, I have to talk about the visuals and the soundtrack, though not normally this soon. iZombie's simple and grotty look may put some people off, and its gore is hardly a match for Stubbs the zombie. But for one artist, the assets aren't all that bad, and they're cohesive in the game's world, which is more than can be said for some other games on this video. The animations also leave much to be desired. I'd love for some grisly details for when I'm munching on the brains of man. The soundtrack can barely be called that. A better term would be a compilation of ill-fitting Kevin MacLeod songs. I've nothing against him or anyone using it, but few of the songs match the style and rhythm of the gameplay. To conclude, iZombie is my least favourite Apple product so far, but it's cheaper than most. For a simple puzzle game with bite, iZombie is a cheaper alternative to ancient action-oriented zombie games.
Don't listen to him, he's not who you think he is. That's enough of that!
But if you're looking for something recent and already mind-numbingly tedious, why not try Uncrowded? This possibly grammatically incorrect pack of Unity assets isn't so much a game as a sandbox of the engine's ups and downs. Don't mistake this brainless survival romp for the half-decent and free block art MMO Unturned, for none of the effort or love in that game is present here. No, really, this is literally a single pack of stuff, the foundation to begin making your own game, but it lacks, you know, gameplay. You spawn in the world with the items your chosen character and job are allowed to begin with, and you're expected to survive. This is easier than expected because the zombies don't actually do any damage at all, they just hump you making mildly threatening grunts. At first I thought they were reducing my thirst and hunger bars, those piss-annoying meters that few devs can claim exist to add any real value or challenge. Apparently they aren't dehydrating me or helping my appetite, meaning they're now just a sodding nuisance. Mowing them down with the myriad of items on the floor doesn't do much, especially in Village. Yes, just Village. The dev gave the game a title but couldn't even be asked to rename the stock town. Oh god, give me strength. Because the zombie spawn rate is so high, you'll be hassled when gathering resources and building your house. You know, it's remarkable how I will have contributed more to Uncrowded than the person who uploaded this on Steam by placing down a few floors, walls and rooftops. Not that the crafting is any good, foundations clip through each other and ladders don't work, making multi-storey houses virtually impossible to build. In order to build, you'll need wood from attacking trees in melee or finding metal on the floor, usually in village. If I didn't sound Yorkshire enough already, I do now. Going off to village to pick up that's metal! Then village is a wonderful place. There's t medicine shop, t pizza place that only sells McDonald's chips, and a gun store called Argon. Wait. What's this? iGun. Authorised by Potato. Yes. Yes it is. There's other places outside a village filled with water and weapons which become rather scary when you leave because only then do the dead materialise to eat your brains, or smell your armpits in the case of this game. Should you choose to settle down someplace nice in Unity Limbo, you'll need a supply of water and food. When these meters reach 0, you take 2 damage per second without water and 1 damage per second without food. You'll not need to worry about that though, because you'll have died of sheer boredom long before those meters run down. And you'll no longer be entitled to a refund either, because this game's been off Steam since before August when I wrote this review. Whether it was removed out of shame or legal reasons, I've no idea, but either one works for me. There's almost no point discussing the visuals because they were originally meant to be edited or added to an original game. Having said that, there is some appeal to the brightness and the weapon models, and there's nothing that isn't obscure enough to not know what it is. In regards to sound, there's no music and only the zombies' weapons of sprinting have very basic sounds. Once again, I can't hold this against Unity when it's meant to be added to. If Uncrowded is good for one thing, it's a good demo of what you get in the package at a really low price. But if you want to use the editing programs, you'll have to pay for them. I wouldn't put it past the dev to have helped themselves to a 5-finger double-click discount.
Fax machines, bollocks more like.
Next up is Mortos, and Mortos is right. It's Mortos clogging up the Steam store like the shower drains of an all-boys school. I even looked up what this game's title was supposed to be, and Mortos is slang for embarrassment in Ireland. If any of my Irish viewers can confirm that, if I have any, it'd be brilliant. Mortos is also slang for asset-packed tripe that shouldn't be sold for anything but a bag of dead badgers. That's some more Yorkshire spake for you. Mortos is a wave survival game set in 4 arenas. Sort of. Let's try again. Mortos is a game where you face trickles of shoddily programmed zombies bereft of any animation competence in 2 maps with a day and night variant. Because of some insane design choice that zombies can only be killed by headshots and not be wounded or even staggered by body shots, Mortos rapidly turns into a joyless game of stop and sprint to get a decent shot on the shambling joggers. Thank Christ for Delta Time, the slow-mo that you can't turn off once it's on. At least it regenerates quickly. Alas, they managed to fuck even that up, with slow-mo putting you at the same speed as your foes. So if you're not looking down your sights when turned to syrup, expect to lose valuable time and headshots. Oh yeah, the fire speed is broken too. Shooting resets the recoil, so it's difficult to tell if your next shot matches the scope of the crosshair. Should you survive 4 rounds of this dismal tripe, you'll face a mini-boss that can't actually hit you. His gun makes the sounds when he has a reload animation, but there's no muzzle flash, nor does he do any damage. This was possibly my favourite part of the game, because I hadn't lost a fifth of my health when being attacked from anything ranging from pregnant spider zombies to rats. To be fair, the game gets tough quickly, and should you decide to play this, I recommend playing with a friend. Sadly, I ate all mine. Middle-earth Shadow of Mortos is not pleasant to look at. The Unity assets are of a pretty low quality, and the zombies are particularly wretched. Then again, their inhuman wobbling makes them scarier to go up against. The lighting is an oddity as well. This is the only game where night vision goggles and flashlights work better in daylight than midnight. The church is especially bad for this, with the interior being clearer at night than day. But hey, the weapons and sounds are adequate. Do I really need to give my final thoughts? Do I really need to summarise Mortos? It's playable at best and a jumbled mess of questionable design at worst. There is not a single reason to pick this up over other wave survival games, besides it not having microtransactions.
Oh dear, all I'll see you through the week.
Destroy your television sets. Now, you must listen to no orders.
You know what I don't review enough of on this channel? racing games. So here's Creepy Racers, a game that the developer admits is 3% own art, 97% asset flip. Admitting this doesn't change anything when you sell a game. You are an absolute wally. Still, it's a fun racing game. It has to be good. Oh, am I kidding? I can't make this look good unless I show you still images. Creepy Racers has really slippery controls, to the point where tilting the stick for any longer than a second at a time will cause you to spin and flip out of control, and lose precious time and pumpkins. Indeed, pumpkins are like a more annoying collectible than CTR tokens. On top of needing to get to the end of the track by a certain time, you need this vegetable people like in everything for a higher star rating. Not only that, but you have to wipe out as few times as possible. Sorry, but with controls like this you can have either one or the other, going as fast as fuck, or taking my time so I don't die. The 9 levels Creepy Racers offers try to bring unique challenges to the table, such as large leaps, steep hills, and watery graves. But again, the controls remove any chance of them being rewarding to tackle. At least pumpkins are always in plain sight and you're not expected to explore for other things. But I did anyway. I tried to find the 3% original art, but only found the edge of the map, and fell off it. The artwork that is there is bloody lovely though. The faux gothic housing, trees and murky atmosphere are not so much creepy as tranquil. It allowed me to meditate on why we don't have a medieval card game yet. I'd love to play a Sir Daniel in a tomb buggy, or Palethorn in a real bone shaker. It'd be perfect for speed demons. As for Creepy Racers sounds, only the sound of the car and munching of pumpkins exist. At least ask Bob and Barn to make your soundtrack. Creepy Racers is an inoffensive time trial, but the controls cripple a good game and make it only okay. I had fun with it, but my thanks go to Unreal, rather than the person who put the barest of effort cobbling it all together.
Gimme that swing, 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 gimme that swing.
Hi there, I'm Johnbonne, and I'm going to be your Prime Minister one day.
Gimme that swing, gimme that swing, gimme that swing.
Not so much a horror game as an action title, Jackal has you play a mercenary slash serial killer trying to make ends meet. When he finds a job in the paper hiring assassins, yes, there are jobs for murderers in the local chronicle, look them up, he's told he'll be given instructions at a building site, which we don't see. The whole game makes the literary mistake of telling rather than showing. We don't see our character's moral or ethical objections or the person handing out these assignments. But it's okay, because we're killing drug dealers and people who drink the devil's wee-wee. That's it. You only get 4 missions and they get easier each time. Jackal could be compared to Hitman if Hitman constantly crashed, had woeful localization, and wasn't so bloody easy. The greatest threat was falling through the floor, if you have the sense not to get caught with a weapon out. Missions have a very simple timeline. You find a photo of the target, you get the weapon in the level, and you distract and kill the target before leaving. Because this game doesn't want to discriminate against the poor, its working class assassin gets a blunt instrument free if he looks for work. Or semi-naked ladies through a window. Hey, I know you watched people shagging in Lucius, so don't you go judging me. Speaking of which, these maps are really compact and everything is in reach, whereas other assassination games usually have larger maps to allow for experimentation and security. Luckily for the Jackal, these poor folks don't even know that they're gonna get whacked by some impoverished porn. The game has an air of guilt and mystery, similar to that trippy adventure game Dreamweb. There's something desperate and dystopian, and its low budget really complements that. Don't get me wrong, I love clubbing these terribly animated sods and seeing their hilarious death scenes, but I have this constant feeling that I shouldn't. Could it be that the developer wants me to despair at the acts I'm encouraged to commit? Or could it just be a load of bollocks? There's little to say about the visuals. They look grimier than Half-Life 2, which works in its favour, but there's some really poor looking objects in the world that I'm not sure help or diminish the gritty, almost cyberpunk setting. The lack of music and quietness makes Jackal a very boring or a very interesting game, depending on how you feel about its setting. If you don't like Jackal, the lack of sound will do nothing for you. Otherwise, you might enjoy the dreariness of it all. Jackal is a cheap and not so cheerful game about murdering people that society is too weak or too cynical to expose. If you want to take on the role of a mindless killer without the slightly puzzling gameplay of Lucius or Hitman, I recommend it. It's been a while since I covered a choose-your-own-adventure game. Or it will be. Technically, this is my first interactive gamebook review. I know I'll review one in 40,000 years' time, but that's neither here nor there.
Now, if excuse me, it's about time I ran, because the Ench's feathered fetid anus.
I mean, it kinda is, because the co-founder of Games Workshop, Steve Jackson, made the game I'm reviewing. Taking a break from his usual fantasy fare, he returned to his childhood joy of horror to give us a one-off tale of terror. The story starts like any good perilous parable does, driving down a dark and stormy road on the way to a mysterious meeting. When suddenly, you see someone familiar on the road and swerve away, crashing your car, you plonker! You climb out of the car to see the person is no longer there and your ride is trashed. Luckily, there's a nearby house, but the bleary-eyed player character didn't read the title and figure out that this was the eponymous House of Hell. The Man of War song playing on his radio should have been warning enough, but did this blithering idiot notice? Of course not. The player must enter the house and get along with the guests, or failing that, escape as soon as possible, because, well, it is the House of Hell. Hell House, on the other hand, is pretty nice though. They have succubi and a popular bingo night on Thursday. Oh, so that's where the confusion must have come in. It turns out the House of Hell is full of all kinds of nasties, imps, undead monstrosities, ghosts, and even a vampire, all wanting you dead, if they feel generous. When you're not evading fiendish folk, you'll need to keep out of the way of or infiltrate a cult gathering on the night of sacrifice. Both are just as dangerous, and it's the cult that will make you believe that you're going down a successful path before closing off all means of escape. This is sometimes a nuisance, but trial and error is a sad reality of a lot of CYOA games. Let us never abbreviate the genre again. Thankfully, you're allowed to save as often as you like with unlimited bookmarks, so being liberal with the feature is expected. You're going to be rewinding your saves a lot, especially if you rolled poor stats, there being 4 that make up your character. You must roll your stamina, skill, luck, and fear. Stamina is your hit points, we all know what that means. Skill determines if you can or can't do something without leaving it to chance. The higher your skill, the more likely you are to hit in combat. Luck is the game's RNG and what dice you get in combat. I could never tell what was high luck unless I rolled at least a 6 on a single die. And finally, as well as most irritating, is your fear rating. This determines how long it takes before you drop dead of fright and how much of the scariest happenings make you poo yourself. This could well be the only game where you poo yourself to death. Oh, hang on, shitting yourself and don't shit your pants leads to a failure state. Sugar! I have a love-hate relationship with the fear stat. On the one hand, it's annoying to have your game come to a complete halt because you cacked your duds one too many times. You can't reduce the amount of fear you've accumulated as easily as you've gained it, but on the other hand, I adore the idea of my sanity being an active part of the gameplay. This isn't new to such kinds of adventure game, and I prefer it to the instant deaths that were rife in Legacy of Dawn Herald of Oblivion. Whatever that is. Your curiosity and repeat failures can just as easily fail you or reward you. Exploration can lead to plot critical items and weapons for in combat. The 2 items that matter the most are the cast iron key and the Kriz knife, which are easier said to obtain than done. On top of needing knowledge of the house and its inhabitants as well as a strong constitution, you have to know the house inside and, well, not so much out. Items you need will always stay in the room, and it's easy enough to map out the interior mentally. Still, I had trouble getting both important items to win the game, and there's no map to refer to, so you're reliant on your imagination. There's not really that much to remember though. The design is coherent and useful information is stored on a slip of paper, so you shouldn't get lost as much as I did. I recommend using what I call Doom logic to find your way around. If ever you come across enemies, you're going the right way. Or you could just lose hit points unnecessarily. In combat, the player rolls their die with the enemy. The game will then add up your skill rating and your score on the die, and do the same for the enemy. Whoever has the highest number deals 2 damage to their opponent, and there's no strategy or control besides thumping the table to re-roll the dice, or getting weapons to increase your skill. And yet it's oddly satisfying. It's better than whatever Legacy of Dawn will have. unless you like playing Phantasy Star on a faulty cogitator. House of Hell doesn't do much in the way of music. Its exploration theme has a Halloween vibe with light humming in the background, and the combat only makes it more dramatic. Personally, I found the pitch to be so high that it was somewhat distracting, but also slow enough that you felt like you got plenty of time to think. The visuals, what few there are, also have this macabre look. You're flicking through a mouldy, sodden journal. Or is it a dirty stone tablet caked with blood? You can also change the font, its size, and the paper type to make images and text clearer. The former something I'd like to see more games adopt. Of all games, how is it that Lucius 2 does its subtitles well? Well, never mind that, it's time to conclude my thoughts on House of Hell. I'm quite relieved that the game is much more than a stat check with typing, memory, and games of common sense. It can be cruel, especially with the fear rating, but every room explored and character spoken to draw you nearer to the end, though it might not be the end you're expecting. I had a lot of fun with House of Hell, and I totally recommend it for folks looking for a horror spin-off of Jackson's usual works.
Some trousers. Called Dave.
Name a game that you never asked for, but got it anyway and loved it to bits. Some will say Dishonored, others will holler Slime Rancher. Today I hold high the banner of a murderous brain chewing on some poor fool's arse. Who would have thought Twisty's asylum escapades could win and devour in one the hearts and minds of the world? I mean, how can anyone resist the image of a brain in a straitjacket tearing into a security guard? Also, escapades is my favourite word, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. You play as Twisty locked in an asylum after murdering disabled orphans and their pet bunnies, or some other shit the devs conjured up in an afternoon hidden away in the main menu. The asylum and escapades therein were built on top of an ancient burial ground where dark forces lie in wait to no one's surprise. After freeing ghosts from their eternal slumber, they help Twisty escape and grant him occult powers. Twisty is, as you'd expect, rather squishy, so stealth and brutalizing your foes is something you'll have to get used to in order to level up. I'm not entirely sure what leveling up does though, because the game doesn't explain it. I think it increases your health by a meager amount and your basic and stealth attacks get a tiny damage buff, but I wasn't entirely sure. Enemies respawn quickly, so you'll have plenty of opportunities to progress, not that it should be needed in the first place. The foes you'll face are mercifully far and few between. They mostly consist of janitors and evil ghosts, with the odd nurse, samurai scientists, yes, really, or soldiers towards the end. You can't evade them, which I don't think helps a game of the maze exploration genre, or when the characters' attacks are as clumsy as Twisty's. Calling upon hypnotized slaves or ghost allies, when they work, can only do you so much good before you get your head kicked in some more. And let's not neglect to mention how daft some of the enemies look. If they don't look and sound like they're from Rascal, they resemble papier-mâché with tits and weapons. But if I sound like I'm complaining, that couldn't be further from my intentions. I love these weird yet wonderful things people somehow come up with. Even the two drawn back camera, lousy hint detection, FMV cutscenes that speak for themselves, and the elevator music gag that has a strange appeal that I might have to be concerned about. The idea itself isn't all that bad though. You explore a hospital speedily, chomping on people just doing the jobs, collecting items and evil moves along the way. It's like an adventure game, but with gleeful murder, less sensical objectives, and being written by 3 1/4 anuses. Oh, and it's got extra lives. For every 100 posters you collect, you can get an extra life, and getting multiple of the same in a row builds up a combo meter to help you earn more points. Because with music like this, you'd really want to. And this brings me neatly onto the graphics and the soundtrack. Considering I referenced Rascal earlier, the cat's out of the bag on what I think of how it looks. Twisty's Asylum escapades look like a PlayStation 1 early 3D PC game, only with superior performance. Its soft, undetailed and shiny surfaces look ancient, but put together well enough to make you believe you're in a typical video game asylum for its runtime. What I find particularly appealing is the amount of blood, both human and ghost, with some enemies slipping on it in a show of low quality animation and stock sound effects. Once again though, I can't stress enough how much I love games like this, in all their low effort glory. The music is from Gyps Fulvus, at least I hope that's the way you pronounce it, in their album Nocturnes for Nightmares, which would explain the dreary toss I suffered, but not the pleasant elevator music. To conclude my mad ramblings at this late hour, I have to say Twisty's Asylum Escapades is a mess. But it's a mess you're expected to roll around in, laughing maniacally at its jankiness and frolicking around its hastily scrolled together mazes. There's not a lot to say about this one, it's pure unfettered filthy fun without the foreplay of wanking.